Well, g'day. Welcome to Stu's Shed. Wanted to talk a bit about the guarding and the riving knife and the insert for the SawStop table saw. This is the SawStop professional model. And just to give you a bit of an idea of, just what makes up this guard, why it's actually a pretty good example of guarding for a table saw, and just some of those features. So, the first thing that we've got here, and this is as it comes, it's got this long sort of bar here on top which clips into position, and that's actually used to give you an indication as you're bringing your timber in whether or not it's going to clear the back portion of the guard or not. Now, you can leave that in position if that's your preference. You can drop it out of the way if you'd like. In my case, I actually prefer just to remove it altogether. But that really is a personal preference thing. Now, the other features of the guard here. Obviously, you can drop the guard actually out of your way while you're doing some work around the blade, or when you're measuring or lining up your marks to the saw, to the teeth of the saw. On either side, it's got a couple of independent flaps. Now that means as you're bringing a piece of timber through and you're only cutting off a thin edge, that one side will lift up, the other side will actually stay down, helping deflect the chips down into the dust collection system, both under the table and through the guard itself. On the back of the saw, there's a couple of small anti-kickback cauls on either side, and there's also two large ones. Now, one of the nice features about this guard is that although you've got these anti-kickback cauls on either side, you can fold them away and they just clip away. Now, when you do need them, they're a great asset. When you are working with something that you're either passing through and then you need to be able to bring them back, like you're doing a partial cut, and then of course you don't want the kickback cauls in place because they will actually lock into the timber. Not only will that stop you being able to bring the timber back if that's what you really needed to do, but they'll also dig in quite badly. So it's nice being able to fold them away as you desire. Now, on a previous saw, I didn't have that option of folding them away, so I ended up taking them off altogether. So I'd rather have them here so I can use them and put them away when I don't need them. So that's quite a clever thing. They've got a bit of a tooth on them which just engages with the workpiece if it does happen to try to get kicked back by the blade. Dust collection on this guard. Now, there's a port at the front here, and the dust actually gets swept by the cutting motion forward. It gets thrown forward, and then when you've got a vacuum attached to the back here, whether that's your dust extraction system or a vacuum type dust extractor, it actually will draw through a channel through the top of this guard any dust that's produced that's not collected below the table, and that just goes straight through and out the back of the port here. So very quickly, that's some of the features of the guard. Now, one of the really nice things about the saw is just how easy it is to get rid of the guard when you don't need it. Now, an example of why you wouldn't need it: if I was going to do a partial height cut, as in cutting a trench or something similar where I didn't actually want to penetrate all the way through, a piece of timber coming through would then get hung up on the guard, because after it's obviously been cut, it can't then pass over this. So the guard in that case would be, obviously not only in the way, but a dangerous thing. So SawStop have given that a lot of consideration, and they've made it very, very easy to remove the guard when it's not required. We remove this table insert, one lever, and it lifts free. It is that fast to remove and replace a guard. Of course, when you're operating the saw without the guard, then you don't have a riving knife, and the ability then for timber to either work its way around the back of the blade and then get caught by the teeth and then thrown, or for timber once it's cut, that relieves the internal stresses on the timber, and it could easily pinch at the back of the blade as the timber basically tries to close up the gap that was just cut. If there's nothing at the back here to stop that happening, the timber will try to grab the back of the blade, and once again it will get thrown. So as a safety mechanism, we do still need something back there, and that's where we have the riving knife. As easy as it is to remove the guard, it is just as easy to fit the riving knife. Now this riving knife operates just below the height of the blade. So although it looks quite close, and that's a good thing, the riving knife is slightly below, so if you are only doing a partial depth cut, that will pass over the top of the riving knife, and yet the riving knife is still there acting to protect you from kickbacks. The other really nice thing about the riving knife and the guard is they are attached to the height mechanism of the blade itself. So as we change the blade height, the riving knife is changing its height as well. And we put the insert back in place, and it's that fast to change from a riving knife to guard and back again. And as you can see, now if I drop this right down for a partial height cut, I can be passing over the top, and there's still the riving knife sitting there to stop any potential kickbacks there. For those who have been observant, and it's not hard to see this, there's a lever at the front here, which is not common on inserts. Now, what SawStop have, instead of having a plate that just sits there, this one actually locks itself down. So if something, for example, came up from underneath and tried to hit the insert out of the way, or bump it out of position, this one's actually locked in position, so that just cannot happen. At the back there's a couple of points here that engage down on the back of the saw. That locks the rear down. The front just sits down, and then that just locks the insert in position. And that now is fully locked, it cannot be pulled out. And just to demonstrate changing it back again, quick release lever, riving knife comes off, guard drops in, quick release lever, re-engaged, and whether I do it before or after, I can put the insert now in place. It's that easy. It's a really nice design. It's just one of these features, just a small feature of the table saw, of the SawStop table saw, but it just goes to show just how much this saw was designed for woodworkers, particularly, not just a machine with function, but really thinking through how a woodworker actually works and how the woodworker actually uses the tool. So, that's the guard, the riving knife, and the table insert of the SawStop table system.